Who was St. Hildegard of Bingen? I'd like to take a moment to read from my 30-day journey with St. Hildegard, published by Fortress Press. Hildegard of Bingen was born in 1098 to Hildebert and Mechthild in Niederhosenbach or possibly Bermersheim, Germany. Most of the biographical information on Hildegard is recorded in her Vita, which is a medieval biography, which was composed over several years by at least 5 scholars, including contributions from Hildegard herself. According to her Vita, at the age of 8 years old, Hildegard was tithed as an anchorite to the male Benedictine monastery at Disibodenberg, under the care of Jutta von Spanheim, a recluse also born of nobility. Hildegard may not have actually entered the monastery until she took her vows as a young teenager, around the year 1115. From a very young age, Hildegard was gifted with visions. She studied the sacred scriptures and theology. She learned to preach and came to master the art of building and administering a monastery, first at Rupertsberg, and then later would expand across the Rhine River into Eibingen. In 1136, Jutta died, and Hildegard was named the new magistra of her community. In 1141, at the age of 43 years old, Hildegard experienced a profound vision of the living light, which commanded her to put into writing the words and images that would be revealed to her. The living light for Hildegard is the divine energy source from which all emerges. Her initial writings were well received by the hierarchy, and in 1148, Pope Eugenius III publicly read excerpts from her work at the Synod of Trier. It was determined that her writings were in fact coming from a divine source, and she was given permission to write down all that the living light had revealed to her. It was from her connection to the living light that Hildegard received her visions and spiritual authority. With the help of Volmar, a Benedictine priest and monk who served as her secretary, confessor, and closest friend for over 60 years, and one of her dearly beloved nuns, Richardis of Stade, she completed her first theological work, Scivias, which was published in 1151. As Hildegard's reputation grew, so did the number of women, wealthy and educated, seeking entry into her religious community. The influx of newly vowed religious created a need for larger quarters. Soon after the Synod granted Hildegard permission to write theology, she received a vision instructing her to move her sisters out of Disibodenberg to their own monastery, where they would be free to some extent from the immediate control of the abbot and the male hierarchy. With some difficulty and courageous effort, she sought and received permission from the abbot and the Archbishop of Mainz to move her sisters to their own monastery. The Margravine of Stade, the mother of Richardis, endowed Hildegard's convent with a piece of land. Hildegard began construction immediately, and the convent chapel at Rupertsberg was blessed by Heinrich, Archbishop of Mainz, in 1152. Over the next several years, Hildegard was deeply engaged in writing, composing, healing, preaching, and leading her sisters to grow in light and love by embracing the Benedictine rule. She completed her second theological work, the Book of Rewards of Life, in the early 1160s, and her third theological work, the Book of Divine Works, in the years to follow. During this time, Hildegard suffered from illness and often found herself bedridden for months at a time, though this did not hinder her ministry. In 1158, she received permission to go on a series of 4 preaching tours. Her homilies were collected and preserved. In 1165, Hildegard founded a second monastery at Eibingen, across the Rhine River from Rupertsberg. While the monastery building itself no longer exists, today a parish church stands on the property housing Hildegard's reliquary, which is believed to include her heart and her tongue. The new cloistered Benedictine Abbey of St. Hildegard was built in 1904 at the top of a hill in Bingen, overlooking the parish church. Hildegard wrote 2 works on the natural world and herbal healing, Physica and Causes and Cures. She composed over 70 liturgical hymns, wrote the first known morality play, Ordo Virtutum, wrote several minor works and 2 hagiographies, contributed to her own vita, created her own language, and produced visual pieces of art, referred to as miniatures, to accompany several of her visions. Throughout her life, Hildegard corresponded with many high-ranking men and women, civil and religious, including kings and popes. Her collection of letters uniquely capture her spirit. Outside of Germany, Hildegard has been virtually unknown for almost 800 years. Her works were rediscovered in the mid-20th century. It has taken scholars decades to digest and translate this great summa that has been preserved. The depth of her work is still being explored and studied by scholars, theologians, artists, musicians, feminists, and ecologists. In 2012, Pope Benedict XVI canonized Hildegard of Bingen a saint and named her the 4th female doctor of the Church. Hildegard offers women and men today an example of extraordinary leadership. She was a woman who embraced her time, and yet can properly be called a woman ahead of her time. Her ecological message, which reflects a deep respect for the sanctity of the environment and the interconnectedness of all of creation, has much to teach us regarding her divinely ordered place, our divinely ordered place within the cosmos. Hildegard's theological concept of viriditas, or greening power, which she believed was the life force that animates the entire created world, has the power to heal the mind, body, and spirit. Hildegard stood strong in the midst of raging storms, and she never wavered in speaking, with the voice of a prophet, what she believed was truth. She led with confidence and integrity. St. Hildegard of Bingen knew who she was and what she was being called to do. Nothing prevented her from following the voice of the living light. Her works give us a unique glimpse into her personality and complex thought.